This is Crystal Gale Smith, your host of American Dream TV. Welcome to Bourbon Country. Come on in. Mark, so it's so exciting to have you on here at American Dream TV. I guess one of the things that I've always been curious about is how the Bourbon Life podcast began. And where does that story take off? Take us through that journey.
I'll do it. And thank you very much for having me. It's an honor and privilege to be here with you today. I really appreciate it. So I'm a native Kentuckian, so I love the state. I love what we do here with bourbon. Love photography. And my wife said, why don't you start an Instagram site? And I'm like, Instagram, what's that? So started an Instagram site. We came up with a name. We sat on the couch and just spitballed names, came up with the Bourbon Life. And it was born December 30th of 2018. I just started taking pictures. I had a small collection and kept buying more and more, doing my own photography, taking pictures. People started noticing on Instagram. It was really fun. And I started getting invited to events. So I would go to these different bourbon events, take pictures, share stories from those events. And then after about a year and a half, it was kind of a natural outgrowth. I decided I wanted to start a podcast. So we started the Bourbon Life podcast. I met a friend and we actually met at the bourbon release. And we just started hanging out together and drinking. He's about 15 years younger, which is kind of funny. So it took some convincing, but I convinced him to start a podcast with me. So February 2020, we're actually going to be 5 years old here in a couple of days. We started the Bourbon Life podcast and it has just taken off from there. But as I've gotten into it, I've developed this true admiration and respect for the people that are in the industry. Because growing up in Kentucky, you hear about bourbon and I think we took it for granted. Didn't understand how big of an impact it really had on our state. But now as an adult, I understand how important it is, our state here. And to me, it's just my way of sharing with the rest of the world, proud of what I do and what we do here in Kentucky.
And it's funny, I've been asked this over the years by people who do not live in Kentucky or just visiting or whatever, but I get asked a lot, what is the difference between whiskey and bourbon? And while I could answer that, I think because you are the podcast host of the Bourbon Life, I think it would be important for people to hear it coming from you. What's the difference between bourbon and whiskey?
Well, what I like to tell everybody, every bourbon is a whiskey, but not every whiskey is a bourbon. So bourbon is America's only native spirit. It has to be produced. I like to joke with people and say it has to be made in Kentucky, but that's not true. It could be made anywhere in the United States. But there are federal rules and regulations that govern how bourbon can be produced. It has to meet certain requirements. It can't be distilled above 160 proof. It can't go into the barrel at higher than 125 proof. So you put it in the barrel, that's where it gets all of its color. So those are the basic requirements. Oh, and it can't be bottled at less than 80 proof. So it has to be 80 proof or higher when it's bottled. So it could be made anywhere in the United States, but cannot be made anywhere outside of the US. Now whiskey though, bourbon is a whiskey, but there are other types of whiskey, Scotch whiskey, for example, and there's all these different requirements. And I don't drink Scotch, so I can't tell you all the requirements, but it has to be made in Scotland. Scotch whiskey cannot be made anywhere else. Irish whiskey, the same thing. Japanese whiskey. There's whiskey all around. Canadian whiskey, rye whiskey, wheat whiskey. There's all sorts of different whiskeys that are out there. So yeah, just because, people say, oh, I'm going to have a whiskey, it doesn't necessarily mean bourbon. Of course, in Kentucky, when you say I'm going to drink whiskey, everybody just assumes it's going to be bourbon. But so again, every bourbon is a whiskey, but not every whiskey is a bourbon.
Do you have anything interesting or any adventures in the looms that you can kind of allude to or talk about, or anything that are aspirations for the future for the Bourbon Life podcast?
That's a great question. Yeah. It's funny because when I started this, it was just an outlet for me as an attorney, because being an attorney is not necessarily creative, but there's part of me that is creative and I always wanted to do that. I played music all my life. So the Bourbon Life has given me that opportunity to express my creativity through photography, through podcasting, and I love it. But yeah, there are some things I'm working on right now. I just purchased an RV last year. We call it the Bourbon Life Mobile Studio. So it's a 25-foot Class C that's been wrapped with the Bourbon Life logo and everything. So I take that around to different distilleries and different bourbon events. I've also started a new series that I'm working on on YouTube. I call it Behind the Barrel. So we're going into distilleries, mostly here in Kentucky right now, and we're doing just little 15 to 20 minute sit downs with master distillers, pretty much the big names that are here in Kentucky and the big people that run the show there. And it's just a lot of fun for me to get to hang out with them, which is something I never thought. I mean, these guys in the bourbon world, a lot of these people are like rock stars. People just look up to them. People show up and they get bottles autographed by these people. And these are guys that I get to just hang out with now and have conversations and have drinks with.
Thanks for joining us today on location here in Midway, Kentucky at Bluegrass Distillers. And I'm your host, Crystal Gale Smith.
We'll see you next time on the American Dream TV.